Hey, greetings, everyone. Lieutenant Colonel Alan West here, and welcome to the Steadfast and Loyal program.
You gotta light 'em up before they burn it down. Better dig deep and put 'em in the ground. Blood on their hands, they're hellbound. Save us all. Ooh, they're gonna burn it down. Save us all before they burn it down.
Hey, greetings, everyone. Welcome back to the Steadfast and Loyal program. Lieutenant Colonel Alan West here. You know, when you look around at what's happening in our country, it is very disturbing to me. You see a young lady like a Selena Gomez out crying for criminal illegal immigrants that are being deported out of this country. Yet there were no tears from leftists when you saw the deaths of Laken Riley, Jocelyn Nungaray, or many of the other women who have been affected by criminal illegal immigrants here in the United States of America. So I thought it'd be great for us to get a women's perspective on gun rights. We always hear about women's rights, but how about women and gun rights? And that is going to come from Kerrie Ann Auclair. She is a Second Amendment advocate and a firearms instructor. She serves as the Women's Advocacy Director and Women's Program Assistant for Gun Owners Action League, GOAL, and leads the Massachusetts chapters of Women for Gun Rights and Armed Women of America. And as a business owner and a mother, she promotes education over legislation. And she and I serve on the board of the Second Amendment Institute. Kerrie Ann, it's great to see you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I greatly appreciate coming on your show. Thank you.
Well, let's talk about, because you have a phenomenal background in the Second Amendment and advocacy. What drew you into this? What was the impetus for you want to step into this space and become an advocate for the Second Amendment?
Well, it's kind of a funny story because my husband is the one that actually wanted to get our license to carry. Many, many years ago when my kids were real young, he used to work third shift, so I was by myself a lot at night. And so he heard a story in the news that kind of shook him up a bit, and he said, no, I want us to learn how to protect ourselves. So we did. We got our license and just never shot it, had it, and then finally got a gun. And I said to myself, no, I need to understand how to use this firearm. And then I had a little bit of a scare with my kids going to someone's house, and the kiddo was trying to get into a gun box. And that really shook me up. Thankfully, nothing happened, and everything was secured as is supposed to be secured in Massachusetts, but that really shook me up. So from that point on, I just really dove into education. Getting to the range, I realized that I met other women that were in the same situation as me, where they just wanted to learn, but they wanted to be in a comfortable space to learn. And they wanted to learn with other women. And then I started hearing other stories from other women that didn't, have maybe domestic violence, for example, and they just didn't feel comfortable being next to a man. And I mean, there could be a trigger, whatever the reason may be. I realized the importance of it. So then I started the women's shooting chapter called the Well-Armed Women back then. They changed the name to Armed Women of America. So at that point, I realized the importance of protecting our civil rights. And then I jumped into becoming the state director for the DC project, now known as Women for Gun Rights. And then that's really, I met Goal, Jim and John from when I dove into this. They're the ones that helped me become an RSO and an instructor from 7 years ago. So I've always been part of Goal, so I kind of feel like I was on a long job interview, and I finally got hired about 2 years ago. So it's been a privilege, an honor, and it's exciting to be part of this world and to be able to be a voice. So I love it.
You always hear from the other side, from the left, the progressive socialists. They're always talking about women's rights. But you never hear them really articulate what you just brought up is the women and gun rights, the ability for women to be able to protect themselves and to have that training. How was it that you were able to go from just a person that wanted to get a license to carry, and then you become a firearms instructor? Now you're one of the top advocates in the country.
Um, so I missed that beginning part because sounded like you broke up a little bit. Do you mind repeating that? I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying is how is it that you have had this incredible journey of a person that just wanted to get a license to carry, and now you're a firearms instructor? That takes some motivation. What brought that on?
To be honest with you, when I remember that first day that I had the meet and greet for Armed Women of America. And I cannot tell you, when I got home, I realized that the women that came to that meeting that night, the stories that they told me, the excitement on their face, it just totally made me realize the importance of it. And it became a passion for me. And I almost felt like I had to protect not only my civil rights, but every single lady that I train. They have a story, they have their why story, and sometimes I know about it and sometimes I don't. And it was just such an honor to be able to be part of that process and seeing a woman on the range, scared and taking that first fire, that first shot, and just looking at me and saying, "Did I just do that?" I'm like, "Yes, you did." And you're taking your power back. You're not a victim anymore. And you are a survivor. And just those words alone made them feel more comfortable and confident with their firearms. And I feel like I did my job. And it's not really a job, it's a passion, I should say. And I'm just so thrilled to be part of that. So I don't know if that answers your question completely. But
No, it does. And are you seeing more women get involved in the Second Amendment world and the shooting sports also?
yes. And so I'm glad that you said that because I've had a lot of ladies actually join the chapter, become members of the range itself, and then realize that there's other things at the club that they wanted to be part of. We have I forget what they call it, the cowboy shoot, I think they call it. So I have a couple ladies that go there in the summertime when they hold those events, and it's great. And they actually followed me too. So I started doing some IDPA stuff, and so they wanted to find out about it, and some more defensive stuff, and they want to find out more about it. So yeah, it's been it's fun to watch them grow and realize it's not just about protection, and you can really have a lot of fun.
You know, the thing that I look at, especially now we're on the backside of this last election cycle, you hear a lot of talk about women's rights. And of course, for the left, the women's rights is always about, dismembering a baby in the womb. Do you think that we are starting to get to a point where we hear more about women and gun rights?
Yes, and I'm glad that you brought that up because I've talked about this before, and I've gotten yelled at by some of the men saying, it's our right too. And you're right. It's both rights. It's a civil right. It's for everybody. But when you put a firearm on a woman's hip, it creates an equalizer. I am small. I am not tall. I'm not big. I am tiny. And there are other women out there that are smaller than me. And we're protectors, and we're out with our children, and we have that right. It's a woman's right to be able to protect ourselves and our family. And taking that away from us it's not making safer communities at all. We become targets.
It's interesting because you just penned an incredible article on that topic. Kind of give us your thoughts that inspired you to do that article.
So when I started traveling with Women for Gun Rights, I'm usually with a large amount of women. So it's like 60, 70 women. And then I realized that when I started traveling for Goal, and I'm literally by myself in an Uber, I'm not with other women. When I went to Philly, I'm by myself in an Uber. I realized that I'm by myself. This is so different than going to DC. Even when we go to DC and we have a large amount of women, we are still defenseless because I can't carry pepper spray unless I pack it, and I don't. I usually have a carry-on, but I'm going to change my way of thinking now. But I can't carry a firearm, and so I'm defenseless. So even when we're with a group of women, we're still defenseless, and that bothered me. And it was eye-opening, especially when I started traveling by myself.
You know, you were recently in Washington, D.C., and tell us about the episode where some homeless gentleman, I guess, was following some of the people in your entourage into a hotel.
Yes, so we did a rally in front of the Supreme Court, which we always do when we're there, and we have a great time. It's fun, it's energizing, that's why we're there. And all of a sudden, we started noticing that there was a homeless guy, and he was walking kind of through the crowd, and we're all watching him, and he seemed harmless enough. And then usually after after the rally, we all kind of dissipate in smaller groups. So we're all set up with certain groups that we usually travel with to meet with our legislators. And so our group went this way, a couple other groups went this way. And as my group was about to cross the street, I noticed that the homeless guy was trailing one group of ladies fast. Not running, but he was walking fast. They went into the hotel and he went flying in right behind them. I don't know if he had something in his hands. I don't know if it was a bag, but I happened to be hurt. So I had a boot, I had a cane. I just ran across the street as fast as I could, opened the door and just screamed, "Hey, ladies!" All I could do. That was my defense, my voice. That was all I had, is to have them at least turn around and put eyes on him. So they realized, and then as soon as they saw him, they realized, oh my God, he followed us in. So they all dispersed and kind of went around, and we all kind of gaggled in one spot in the lobby, and security was called. But the scary part was it didn't end there. I went up to my 5th floor. I looked out the window, and he was outside the hotel by the doors waiting. So I took a picture, sent it to, Kelly Pigeon, who was in charge of us, really. I said he didn't leave, so she called the cops, and then we had to wait. We couldn't leave the hotel.
And you always hear, people on the left talk about empowering women, but then they don't want you empowered to be able to take care of the very, very first inalienable right that you have, which is your life. What would be your message to, let's say, Senator Elizabeth Warren, or the governor of Massachusetts, or the mayor of Boston, since you live up there in Massachusetts, some of these women that are out there in these places that don't believe you should be able to protect yourself?
I wish I could sit down and have a long conversation with all the ladies from the Red Shirts, which is Moms Demand Action. I would love to have that conversation, because for me to get in their mindset and to understand why they feel this way. And really, truly, I believe it's a sense of fear, because it's the fear of unknown, right? It's the fear of not understanding what a firearm does and what it doesn't do, And when you explain that to them and then tell them of a story that somebody used a firearm to protect themselves, and unfortunately, you don't hear those stories very often in the media. And it's very frustrating, because I personally know people who have saved their lives with a firearm. Mary from Connecticut, if she didn't have that firearm, she would have been dead. Her daughter probably would have been dead. And she had the ability to get that guy off of her enough, just a split second, to be able to get to her firearm, and she saved herself. She didn't even use it. She just pointed it at him, and that's all it took. And I had another woman, that same thing, in an Uber, in fact, and she didn't even have it. She just used the motion that she was grabbing it, and he jumped and he ran. But smart thinking, right? So yeah. I would love to be able to have that conversation with somebody and really sit down and let them understand that if you turn on the news right now, you're going to hear a lot of bad things that happen. And I don't want to be on that side. I refuse to be a victim. I refuse to have my family hurt because you don't understand and you're fearful of something that's just a tool. It's a tool that we use when we need to.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're speaking with Kerrie Ann Auclair. She is a Gun Owners Action League program assistant there in Massachusetts. She is also a chapter director for Women's for Gun Rights, and we'll be right back after this break.
Hey folks, Lieutenant Colonel Alan West here at Watchtower Firearms. This is the custom design AR-15 that was just made for me. It's got my Steadfast and Laurel logo there. On this side, you can see my signature, my master parachutist wings, of course, American flag. And I just want to tell you that you can't be a great American unless you have a great American weapon. And that's exactly what Watchtower Firearms is building. Great American weapons, all American parts, manufactured right here in the great state of Texas. And oh, by the way, let me see, where is the serial number on this one? TX 1836. If you're from Texas, I think you know what that means. God bless you. God bless Watchtower.
Okay, dead center. Yes.
Hey folks, welcome back to segment number 3 on this episode of Steadfast and Laurel program. We have been talking with Kerrie Ann Auclair, who is a Second Amendment advocate and firearms instructor. She lives up in Massachusetts. And Kerrie Ann, there's a little bit of history that's going to be happening in Massachusetts this year. Everyone's focused on the 250th anniversary of America, which will be next year, July the 4th, 1776. But something's going to happen this year, a 250th anniversary in Massachusetts. Share that with the people.
So in Lexington is this 250th anniversary. I'm kind of excited about it. Well, I'm really excited about it. But it's where the shots heard out across the world. It's where the British were trying to take away their armory. And it's kind of happening still right now in Massachusetts. So, and so we have a lot to remember, and we have a lot to celebrate, and we have a lot of work to do right now in Massachusetts. As you know, the law passed Chapter 135 in Act of 2024, August 2nd, 2024. So, yeah.
You know, it's interesting because what you're talking about, the Sons of Liberty and the militia who came out on that field at Lexington Green and also at Concord, you know, I always tell people there was no army on April the 19th of 1775 in America. There was no Navy, there was no Marine Corps. There were just citizens, men. And they understood, I believe, that as long as they were armed, they could be citizens. If they were disarmed, they would be subjects. And that's why we have the Second Amendment, the well-regulated, well-trained militia being necessary for the security of the free state. When you think about what happened there 250 years ago, and you look at what is happening now in Massachusetts, what would the Sons of Liberty say to citizens of Massachusetts today?
They would probably shake their head in disgust. But, you know, I'm glad you brought up the Sons of Liberty, because when I went there and I looked at there's a monument, and I think you know what I'm talking about. And the back of it shows all the names of all the Sons of Liberty. And I didn't realize how many families put their whole entire names in jeopardy, meaning it was a father and their 4 sons. It was a father and their other son. And so it goes to show you how hard they fought for our freedoms and how much we should, you know, honor their souls for that. Yeah, they would shake their head because, you know, here we are, where the battle continues and we're still fighting for our armory. So, you know, being excited to be able to celebrate that is to remind folks in Massachusetts, because there's a lot of people that just throw their hands up in the air and says, I'm done, I'm out, I'm moving. And I can't move. I'm here, I'm settled here, and I'm not moving because I refuse to stop fighting. And so this, I hope, will be a reminder. And we are going to be doing something, Goal is going to be doing something there for the anniversary. And I want people to be reminded that don't give up. don't give up, please, because if you give up here in Massachusetts, you're giving up in any other state that's going through the same thing that we're going through. And we just can't.
You know, I call them the new redcoats because, as you articulated, the redcoats back then were marching toward Concord to destroy a weapons and armaments factory. Give us some examples of some of the laws that you have there in Massachusetts, because our audience here in Texas and across the country, I mean, they're probably going to just scratch their heads and say, really? That can't be happening.
Yeah, and it's so if you go to gun owners, so it's goal.org//training mandates, it breaks down the whole entire bill, because I could be here for 2 hours to explain it. And some of the stuff that I tried to explain, I can't even get my head wrapped around
Well,
it.
you got 8 minutes.
Yep. So I will tell you that
Yeah.
the new law, we had an 18-month kind of like a break, but after 18 months, the training mandates are going to take place. So now they're going, if you get your license to carry, you have to go through injury prevention, suicide prevention, de-escalation tactics, live fire, on completion of a written exam. And I, as an instructor, will not be able to give you your certificate. I have to tell the state that you did my class. And then they have to decide whether they're going to give the certificate to the student.
Now, how long
So-
is this process? I mean, I go to purchase a weapon, and then if I want the license to carry it, first of all, do y'all even have constitutional carry in Massachusetts?
No. So in order for us to even possess either a long gun or a pistol, we have to have a license to carry. And that's just the way it is. So yeah, again, it's ridiculous. And the new training mandates, it really is a discrimination towards anybody that can't afford it, because you know that this is going to cost a lot more money for folks to even exercise their rights. And it shouldn't be this way.
So obviously they did not read those last few words of the Second Amendment, shall not be infringed. No. Because what it appears to me is that they're trying to make it difficult. They're trying to discourage people. And to tell someone that you do not have this constitutional right to get a firearm unless you first go through all this training to get the license to carry card, and then we could still maybe say, we don't want to give it to you anyhow. Am I correct with that?
Yeah. I mean, so right now we do have, like I said, an 18-month delay, because even the state don't know what they're doing, meaning they have no idea if, like, for example, as an NRA instructor, will that basic pistol class be sufficient for some of these requirements. So we're still waiting for the state to figure that out. Yeah. So, and then when they figure that out, then they have to make sure that we have access for, as an instructor, to be able to do all these additional things that we need to now train our students for. It's just, it really, really infuriates me, because they don't want, the whole premise of this was Representative Michael Day 2 years ago was doing a listening tour. He wanted to make safer communities. And it really is not. It's doing the exact opposite. And you think that the bad guys on the street are going to look at this bill and go, oh, I can't do that because the law says so. No, they don't follow the rules. They don't follow the regulations. Mm-hmm. They just do what they want. And so now you're taking this away from us again.
Yeah. It's the amazing thing is that, leftists and these people that want to control our Second Amendment rights, and I don't understand what part they don't realize. It's in the Constitution. It's a right, and again, shall not be infringed. But these things that they come up with, only people with a conscience, only legal, law-abiding citizens are going to pay attention to it. I could almost guarantee you that a criminal illegal immigrant is not going to sit down and read that statute in Massachusetts and say, I probably should not be walking around here carrying this pistol. To me, if you want to talk about safer communities, you're making unsafe communities, because you're restricting people from being able to protect themselves. Now, you said you're a small person. Are you able to carry a police officer on your hip?
No, that would be kind of, no.
I just, and so it's perplexing to me that folks don't understand, because we have the same problem here in Dallas, where we had city council members that were fighting against changing the city ordinance to ensure that we had the right ratio of police officers per every 1,000 citizen. Why don't folks, you feel, and again, this comes back to what we talked about in the first segment, why don't people understand, especially if you're talking about women's rights, don't you think women have the right to life?
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. It just doesn't make any sense to why. And you said something earlier too about how, again, we were talking about they're making unsafe communities. And, I don't, going back to that, when you talked about the illegal immigrants in Massachusetts, they arrested, I think, 4 of them. One of them was convicted 17 times and let back out on the street. And one of them was a rapist. Another one was part of some cartel or something, And so if these people that really honestly think they're trying to make safer communities by restricting our gun laws, they should really take a really hard look at really what's going on in all our states. It's because I'm sure my state's not the only one where they keep letting these people back out on the street again. And we see it a lot. For a woman in Rhode Island, she had a domestic violence situation happen. She put in a restraint order against him. They let him out. He had a gun that he had somehow, and he went to the house and killed her in front of her kids. And so it goes to show you that letting these people out it's not solving anything. And again, a restraining order is just a piece of paper.
That begs the question. You brought up this group, which is Michael Bloomberg, former mayor of New York City, billionaire. I'm sure he's got all kinds of safety and armed guards surrounding him. But moms demand action. Where were they when this woman was killed by someone that she had a restraining order on? Where's the action that they demanded in that case?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, go ahead.
I went to a listening tour with Rep. Day almost 2 years ago, and one of the subject was domestic violence. And there was a woman that got up from Moms Demand Action, who in fact was a survivor, and she said she told her story. So I waited. I got up and I said, I feel bad for you, but if you had a firearm on your hip, I guarantee you wouldn't have gone through that. And they all gasped, and someone said, if I had a firearm on my hip, he would have used it against me. So they're really in the mindset of just continuing to be a victim rather than a survivor. And it blows my mind, because I just never really could wrap my head around it. But they're fearful. And I really, truly think that group should be ashamed of themselves, because they keep these women as victims for their own agenda, rather than creating survivors. And it's sad.
That's the unfortunate self-licking ice cream cone, that you have to keep women as victims, so in order to continue to perpetuate your existence as an organization that does nothing but keep them as victims. As we get ready to close out, how can people follow you out there? How can people maybe invite you to another state to come and do some training and speaking? How can folks get in touch with Kerrie Ann Auclair?
Well, I'll make it easy. You can email me at kerrie@goal.org. So that's KERRIE at goal.org. And you can check out the Goal website. I also have an email for my own private business. And that's also part of my YouTube channel, which is Sisters in Arms, a firearms story. So you can email me there at waystobeempowered@gmail.com.
Kerrie Ann, I want to tell you, thank you so much for all that you do. It's a pleasure and an honor to serve with you on the board of the Second Amendment Institute, and I look forward to seeing you sometime soon. Ladies and gentlemen, please get in touch with Kerrie Ann Auclair if you want to have someone that is knowledgeable on the Second Amendment and an awesome firearms instructor. I'm scared to go shooting against her because she might outshoot me. So God bless you, Kerrie Ann, and
Thank you.
I look
God
forward to
bless
seeing
you.
you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We'll be right back after these messages.
Before they burn it down.